Hi, and welcome to Accidentally Awesome. Today we have an interview with Laura Hopes, and I'm delighted to have you here, Laura. How are you?
I'm good. I'm delighted to be here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. We've got sunshine in Sydney, so we can't be complaining after the amount of rain, can we?
No, it's so nice, isn't it? Dying to get outside and get a bit of sun on my skin.
I managed to have a little walk this morning with the dog. She likes to get out first thing, and if I don't take her out first thing these days, she just looks at me. She gives me the stink eye until I get the lead out. So you have your own business called Hope's Consult. That's HR and yoga, which to me seems like there's opposite ends of a spectrum, but is actually a fantastic combination when you've got ADHD. So tell us a little bit about your business to begin with.
Yeah, so I've owned the business for 4.5 years, and it's evolved a lot over that time. And so the kind of bread and butter of the business is working with recruitment agencies. I used to be a recruiter and I used to own a recruitment agency. So now I work with recruitment agencies to run training and development. And I also work with recruitment agency leaders to do like advisory and HR and learning and development work with them. But as a side hustle over the last few years as well, I've also been teaching yoga and meditation. And it's actually really nice to be able to offer that to my corporate clients as well, because
I can imagine
is around, well, how do we manage stress, and how do we manage the frenetic pace of, the corporate world? And so it's actually kind of nice to have something else to throw into the mix.
Yeah, and I think like so many of us with ADHD, we need to keep things novel. And although from the outside, you might not think that they work well together, I can see why they would, being able to offer that extra thing.
That's why the business has evolved so much, when I first started it, and why I enjoy it still so much, because, one day I'll be running a training session on this, the next day I'm doing a strategy session here. Like no 2 days are the same. And I've always did that in my career. And even before diagnosis, I didn't know where that came from, but I need novelty. I get very, very stale very quickly.
I think we all do when we've got ADHD. So you mentioned diagnosis there. How long ago were you diagnosed?
Only 2 years, and I'm 35
that's fairly
now.
recent then. Yeah. And did you have any inkling of this as a child? Did your parents pick up on it?
As a child, no. And I think like a lot of us women who are diagnosed later in life, it wasn't picked up. I had a lot of behavioural issues in my teenage years.
Yeah.
And a lot of behavioural issues at school, and my school reports were always, as a lot of us are, along the lines of, is she just applied herself?
Mine were always could do better.
Potential.
Yes. And needs to stop talking.
Easily distracted.
That's definitely one.
and then I noticed in my when I became an adult and in my working life, like I would just chop and change things all the time, and I was always known to be the person who's like, oh, Laura's doing this now, or oh, isn't that surprising, that didn't work out, that didn't last. And a friend of mine who started speaking to me about it, because one day we were talking about the fact that I love reading non-fiction, but I just can't apply myself to it. And they were like, oh, that's really interesting. Like a friend of mine who has ADHD, says the same. And I was like, that's interesting, because I've always thought maybe there was something. And then I started researching it, and was just like,
light bulbs,
tiny fireworks going off of like, oh my gosh, I've never been able to figure out what this might be.
And how did you feel about that?
Oh, it was a real mix when I got diagnosed. There was a lot of relief, I think.
Yeah.
But it also felt very strange to put a label on things that just felt like they were inherently me.
Yeah, your own little quirks. Did you go through that sort of grieving process because of it?
Yeah, I did a little bit. No, not a little bit. I did because a lot for me, my struggles when I was younger. And I think that once I was diagnosed, that kind of started to unravel a lot of memories and things for me.
Yeah.
I started to see how this has played out in various forms in my life. And there was a sadness to it and also, why didn't anyone pick up on this?
Yeah, and I've brought that up when I've interviewed Tina and Jenny in the previous ones. I brought that up with them because it was something that really hit with me. I sort of self-diagnosed to begin with. Both my kids have ADHD, and I started reading into it more for my daughter. And then I read into it for women, and then I was like, oh, that's me. And I got really angry for a while. You've gone and seen this person and that person, and then you have that grief for little Lorna and little Laura and what could we have been. And it's a lot, isn't it? It is a lot to take on.
It is. And I think, it wasn't as talked about. I'm so pleased the conversation happens now for people. And it's there's so much more awareness, because there just wasn't when I was at school. And you kind of go, well, that's fair enough that it was overlooked, but there is a part of you that's like, why was it overlooked? Why did no one go, like, are you happy? Like, what's going on for you? Like, why have we got all these behavioral issues? Like, you're not a naughty person.
No.
I think you're told, when you have ADHD and you're a kid, you're told that you're badly behaved, and that's a lot for people to carry.
And I've my kids' biggest advocates. At the end of last school term, I went in to see both teachers. I thought I'll give them a term to settle in, new teachers, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what, I can see that they're struggling. And that kind of brings it back to yourself when you see your kids struggling, because you go back to your childhood and you're like, I'm not going to let that happen. So I try and make sure I advocate for my kids, even though the school knows there are issues. And I actually got like a standing desk for my daughter. Because she has the hyperactive kind and she needs to be moving. And just recently I put up on my Instagram a photo of me with these earmuffs on, because she won't wear ear defenders, but the noise really bothers her.
Okay.
So I got her them. But yeah, I mean, it is becoming more prevalent in schools that they understand it better. But yeah, it's hard when we think back to what we went through.
Yeah. So, and you just think about the average learning environment, like, so hard. Yeah. So I think about that now. I can't, sit on an hour-long webinar without needing to feel like I need to run around the house.
I've got this thing. I just picked this up yesterday, and it's like a stress ball that's a pop-it thing as well.
Oh, good. Are you enjoying it?
I am. And that's it. I can't sit still. I've realized that myself from doing these videos. I cannot physically sit still, and I did not have any awareness of that beforehand. So I take it that speaking to your friend and looking into it is what made you seek diagnosis. Did you get medication when you were diagnosed? Did you decide to try it or move away from that?
I actually haven't. They left it with me as, let us know. And I haven't. And I at times have thought about exploring it.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like one of the comments that my psychiatrist made when she diagnosed me was, you already have a lot in place. You seem to have intuitively put a lot in place already, which actually does seem to help you. And, I've got really strong organization. That's taken years to master, but having a really strong meditation practice, I do daily exercise.
Yes.
I have a toolkit that sustains me. And I think because I've never had I might have medication and then go, oh my God, what have I been doing?
Yeah.
Next level. But because I've never known any different and I've got tools that help me,
I
don't feel like I'm struggling. I mean, of course, some days I feel like I'm struggling, but I don't know any different. And so just for me right now, and I think at the time it was like, this is enough to try and get my head around.
Yeah.
I just didn't know whether that journey was right for me. And I've never kind of re-picked it up really.
Yeah. And that's like my daughter. We've tried her on 2 different ones now, and neither of them have worked for her. She flat out refuses to take the one that she's been prescribed recently. She says it makes her head feel worse. But I'm on that one, and for me, it just decreases all the noise. But for me, I think whatever tools I'd used up until having kids were great. Then when I have kids, as my psychiatrists have said, he says the wheels just fell off, didn't they? And I was like, yep. Especially seeing as both my kids have got this, and my son's also autistic. So, you've got kids with extra needs, and you are unable to do that. So when he asked me if I wanted to take meds, I was like, yes, please. I'd like to trial them at least. And they've been a game changer for me. But I'm like you, I'm trying to find more things that I can do that actually help. So as I mentioned to you before we started doing this, I've been taking my dog on the walk in the mornings, and I've found this awesome YouTube channel that does walking exercises. So it's low impact, and it's so much fun. So I've been doing that a few times a week as well. So what other things do you find actually help you? You've mentioned your meditation, your yoga, good organization skills. What other things are helpful?
I think exercise is my biggest thing. Like that's when I really feel my symptoms. And I think I am in a privileged position at the moment. And I think, I've spoken to other people around this, and, having a family, and that changes the dynamic. Because at the moment, my mornings are completely my own, So I can get up, I can do my meditation, I have a cup of tea, go to the, but exercise for me, because I am the hyperactive type, is my big thing. I just find it gives me the dopamine hit that I need. It brings my mood energy up. It wears off, it tires me out. So I think movement is my biggest thing.
And do you notice it on days that you don't manage to exercise?
That's where everything, I get really frustrated really easily, very, very restless. Can't stand still, can't concentrate on work. Like for me, daily movement. And I think if I didn't have that or the ability to do that, then I probably would be looking at a medication journey, because
so that's really a non-negotiable for you every day then.
Every day.
And it's, I took my daughter to see a psychologist just because we need to get some more skills for both of us, well, all of us, and get her on a better path with herself. And I mentioned that we were going out in the mornings with the dog. I try to do it before I take them to school. And she was like, that's a great idea of getting her out with you, because she can burn off, as we call it, our wiggles and jiggles in the morning, because she'll usually come on her scooter or her bike or whatever. So she's back and forward, and she'll do 2 or 3 times what I do. So by the time she's going to school, she's like,
just being brought down a little bit.
Yeah. And another thing that we did for her recently was we made a perfume.
Oh, really?
She got to choose some essential oils, and she doesn't want to. If I try and get her to wear it in the morning, she's not interested. So I've been spraying it on her school uniform and giving it to her. So I mean, I'm all for the different things that can build up and make your life a lot easier. And it sounds like you've really got them in place.
I've got a really good naturopath as well, who has given me a nice kind of medley of supplements, which seems to help as well. And I actually really notice diet. If I eat certain things, I can just feel it in my body.
That's interesting. So do you pay a lot of attention to gut health and things like that?
Yeah, I just am very careful about preservatives and additives. And it's funny, because when I say to people, I can feel that in my body, they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, a person with ADHD would know what I mean, just like high sugar and things like that. So I just try and eat, I'm vegetarian anyway, but I just try and eat, I still have junk food, and I love a pizza and all of that, but I try as best as I can to eat a lot of fresh fruit and fresh veg, and not a lot of processed food. And I do find if I have a lot of processed food, again, I get the wiggles and jiggles. That kind of affects my restlessness. So
and we found that with her as well. And I'm trying to wean her back onto a better diet again. And I have to say both my kids are pretty good with it. It's me that's the one that needs to get onto a better
all of this
way.
stuff is hard, isn't it?
It is.
There's some things you have to be militant with that other people don't even have to think about.
I know. Well, I went out yesterday and bought myself a special lunchbox. It's got like 5 containers within it. And when I'm making the school lunches in the morning, I'm going to be making my own things. It's going to have like grapes and tomatoes and hummus and carrots and things in it. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes it doesn't look it with me, but sometimes I actually forget to go and have something proper to eat. So
we'll get something in and you're left with crisps or whatever you've got around the house as snacks.
Exactly. And that can be so bad for us. So, you know, we've talked about the difficult things that can come along with ADHD. What are your personal struggles? What do you find as some of the worst things that you have to cope with?
I think for me, I can get really angry really quickly, and I can get very overwhelmed.
Yes.
By little things, you know, even this morning, and I've done my workout, done my meditation, I had to book an appointment. They couldn't see me when I needed. And so now I'm going to have a bit of a back and forth on it. And I just lost it, you know, like I've got a very short fuse. And once it blows, I go up very quickly and come down very quickly, but it does leave me with a lot of remorse. And I think my partner bears the brunt of a lot of that.
Yeah.
So that's one of my biggest things.
So are you seeing a therapist at all to help you with that? Or is it just something that you're aware of?
I'm aware of it. I do see a therapist with it. I've had some great advice around it. I think I'm better now than I ever have been because I know where it comes from.
Yes. And it is a journey of self-discovery, isn't it? You're not always aware of where these things come from until you start looking into it.
No, and I just thought I have, you know, and I've got very bad patience. But my partner's really good with me now of like, if we're in a supermarket queue or something, things are taking a while. He's just like, why don't you just go? And it's like speaking to a kid. Why don't you just go and have a look at that over there? And off I'll totter, because he just knows, you know, and there's some things that he's like, I'll take that because I just know that that's going to be painful for you, whereas it won't be for me. So I think having people around you to understand where your weak spots are is really helpful, because then you don't beat yourself up so much about it.
And if they can see it and point it out to you in a gentle way as well, I think that's very helpful.
Before you explode. So I think that the patience and the short fuse, and I do get overwhelmed very easily.
I found that recently. I had a day last week when the kids were home. My husband had gone into the office. So he's at home 3 days a week. He's in the office 2 days a week. So he was in the office. I was at home with the kids. We'd gone to that time zone place for kids. So I was already sensory overload up to here. I needed to do some work, and then it just wasn't happening because of the kids doing one thing and another. And I just about blew a fuse. Not at them. I went and rage cleaned the house. I had the vacuum out, and I'm like, dog hair and you know, and I kept away from them because I knew I just was not in a good place. But it really made me sort of stop and go, I need to be more aware of this. I mean, I've only been diagnosed for 2 months, so although I've had ADHD all my life, I'm, you know, still new to trying to figure out this side of it. And I think it's so important for us to do that. I've started journaling to try and help myself understand where it's coming from. Is that something that you've done at all?
I have. When I have like a real kind of meltdown or something, I find it really helps me to put pen to paper and kind of write out my frustrations, and because I think that's a really healthy way of like clearing our energy and getting rid of emotions. So I do find journaling helps. I think for me, when I experience that, I kind of need to do like what you do. Like I have to work the energy out of me a little bit. And often I have to do that on my own, like having people around when I feel overstimulated or overwhelmed.
It just makes it worse, doesn't it?
So sometimes I just have to go and take myself out for a walk and just, level myself. But it is hard, and it's you still, like, even after 2 years, and I'm sure people who've been diagnosed for 10, 15 years, you still have these little moments where you're like, oh, that's because of that.
Yeah.
Not in a kind of justifying it way, just like,
no, it's like, oh, that's it. I've been doing that a lot recently. I've been listening to a few podcasts, and I do it when I'm in the car. I've got to go places, and I'm sitting talking to the phone. I'll put it on, and then I'll go and drive, and I'm like, yes, that's me. oh, that's ADHD, right? Okay.
Because there's things that, like, I never knew with, like, the anger thing that was an ADHD thing, like, not being able to manage your emotions. Like,
yes, emotional regulation's a biggie.
It was like this, like, overwhelm. I just remember bursting into tears because I was like, it didn't justify it, but it gave it a reason.
Yeah, and it allows you to give yourself some grace, doesn't it?
A little bit.
Like, this is not an excuse, but I have to be aware that this can happen now. Yeah. And that is a good thing. It's becoming self-aware, isn't it?
Totally. Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the rubbishy things about ADHD, but as you know, this channel is called Accidentally Awesome, because I think ADHD does come with some really awesome things, and I feel I have to be positive about it because of my kids, and because if we don't, then we just dwell on all the crap that comes with it. So what do you think, being ADHD, what has been awesome for you with that? When you'd mentioned hitting on your yoga and HR, which is a strange combo, but works. What else do you think?
I call them my superpowers, right?
Yes.
I think there is so much to be celebrated about neurodivergent brains.
Yes.
And I think one of the big things for me is that I'm very intuitive. I think a lot of people who are ND tend to be.
Yeah. Do you read a room when you go into it? Can you pick up 100%. On all the currents?
100%. And I can get so into other people, we'll be in a restaurant, I'm like, that's happening over there. And my partner's like, how do you know that? I'm like,
yes, because you've noticed it and you've picked up on it and you've just went, oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm in there. So, and I also think, like, we're amazing in crisis.
Yes.
And so much of my job is troubleshooting. I'll sit down with people, strategy sessions, and it's like, what do you think I should do about this? We've got this going on. My brain works so well with problem solving.
And I think because we can do that rapid fire thing, it doesn't overwhelm us. We thrive on it.
Yeah. So I'm just there. Like, a lot of my work requires me just to be really present and deal with things as they come up. And my brain works so well in those environments. And I think with that as well, it's why I've got such variety in my job, because my brain can handle that level of variety, and I can not fly by the seat of my pants, but I can deal with things on the spot, and I can strategize. And I think
you're right. I think it's the way our brains actually work. It is that that need for that in a lot of ways. Yeah. I'm actually going to be doing a video. I've recorded it, but I'm going to be putting it up in a week or so about using our ADHD in business for good, and how it can actually be of massive benefit for us. One, to help calm our brains down a bit, because we can use it to diversify like you have. And two, just, to satisfy that need for novelty as well, and change and difference. But I think you're right. We really do work well in a crisis. We had a massive crisis in the family last year. My husband had been unwell. He'd had a heart attack, had came home from hospital. And it was Australia Day last year, and he was sitting beside me. He'd said he felt a bit puffed out. And I says, well, look at what you've been through. It's really not a surprise. So he'd had something to eat, sat beside me, and then just sort of went backwards on the sofa and wasn't breathing properly. So I did the whole sternum rub, shook him, had my phone beside me and started dialing 000 straight away. The kids came down wondering what was wrong. I got them out of the house, told them to go to the neighbour's house. While I was speaking to the 000 lady, got him on the floor and did CPR until the paramedics arrived. And he's good, he's fine, but it was a really horrendous situation, but it was like something in your head just clicked, and I was like, right, this is what we need to do. You know, he's a tall man. I had to get him on the floor, and I just was like, right, you know, dragged him by his feet, got him on the floor, did the CPR, having no training in it, kept him going, and then, yeah. But it's like, most people I know, when I've told them I've done that, they've been like, how the hell did you manage to do all that? And I'm like, just did. And even now, thinking back on it, although I've got a bit of trauma from it, which is, you know, normal, I still don't freak out about kind of what happened and how I managed it, because I'm like your brain just works like that. I think we tend to work like 5 steps ahead of where other people might be.
And it's such an amazing quality. And that story is, you know, gave me goosebumps, but it is such an amazing quality to be able to be so in the eye of a storm and be able to hold yourself in that. And I think people with ADHD are very, very good at that. And if you find yourself in a career where you're presenting or problem solving, or, you know, doing things that require you to be in the moment, you'll thrive. Absolutely, you'll thrive, because I think that's where we're best. We're best in the moment. We're best when we're switched on, fired up, ready to go, dealing with stuff, practical.
Do you do a lot of that in your job? A lot of presenting and things? Yeah, because Jenny, that I've also spoken to, she does that as well, and she didn't realize that it was her superpower. When I asked her that question, she was like, I got quite upset about it. It's like, ADHD's rubbish. We don't, you know, there's nothing awesome about this. And she found it quite confrontational to think about it like that, until she spoke to a friend, and our friend was like, well, what about when you do this? And like you, she does a lot of presenting. What about when you do that? And she can think on her feet really quickly. And she's like, that's ADHD. And she's pretty sure of it. Yeah, I mean, it's you, but ADHD kind of amplifies that, and it's a good thing.
I think anyone who has ADHD who feels like they're thriving in their career, they're doing really practical, hands-on, expressive work. You know, we really do thrive in those situations, and I think we can handle. I feel like when a crisis is on, like a proper crisis, that's when I'm at my sweet spot. I'm like, okay, cool, like I've got this, you know. And then the smallest thing will happen, and I blow up and I burst into tears. But when an actual crisis,
you can't handle putting your sock on in the morning when it doesn't go on right. You have a meltdown because of that.
Then an actual crisis,
you need CPR. Yeah, I'm here.
Got it. And I think that ability to hyper focus as well. Like, if I need to get something done, oh my God, it's going to be done quicker than anyone else. You know, I'm in the zone, I'm boshing work out, you know.
I find it really weird, because I've only just recently noticed my hyper focus with strange things. You know, like sometimes you see on Facebook, like you're in a group of something and people are like, oh, I really need to do such and such, but I've got no idea where to start. I don't know why. I might not even know these people very well, but I go down that rabbit hole and I will find that solution for you, and I'll do it in minutes. There you go. This'll work. Try it out. And and it just seems to be, you know, and until I do that, I cannot chill out. If I see somebody needing something, I'm like,
you're like, I'm in there. You're like the amp up party. Do you find with your writing that you can get into hyper focus?
I recently interviewed a lady who is amazing. She's a professor, and she works in aged care. She was a registered nurse, went on to the training side of things, and then went on to, she's just fantastic. So she actually helps government with aged care. She's just a phenomenal person. And when I was writing her article, I had tears running down my face, because I was so into what she was saying. I always take a break between interviewing and actually writing it, so it settles in my head. And she'd written this quote. She'd said this thing that I'd put in as a quote, and I just had tears. And that's happened to me several times. You know, there's been times when I've actually been interviewing somebody, and, you know, I just burst into tears this time with this lady, and I was like, I'm so sorry, this is so unprofessional. but you become so in the moment with that person and things that they go through. And she was like, it's all right, dear, don't worry about it.
Crying even more because she's mothering you.
I know, and I was just like, oh, but yeah, I really go into it. If there's things that I need to sort of do a bit of research on, I'm down the rabbit hole. Getting right into it and really enjoying it. And I think because I have a lot of variety in what I write 5 different articles a month. So I get to know different people, which is great for me because I'm a chatterbox. And I get to like know different things. You know, I speak to people that do completely different things. So like last month I'd spoken to this lady who was the professor. I also spoken to a 91-year-old lady who had just does masses and masses of volunteering. And, you know, it's just, there's so different ends of the spectrums on the things that I talk to people about. You know, I could be talking to a pastor one day and a graffiti artist the next, which I have done. You know, and I think for me, like you say, about finding a job that's perfect for you, I'm in my sweet spot now. So we're going to wrap this up now because I know you've got a very busy day with your yoga and your HR and everything else. You mentioned exercise is one of your favorite things as far as a life hack goes. Do you have any others that you'd like to share?
Any other life hacks? I think one thing that I've always thought and that I've tried to do is if you are stuck, you know, in the vortex of needing to do something, or my advice is always just to start, and if it's not working after 5-10 minutes, then stop. But typically, because that's how our brains work, the minute we start something and get into the groove, whether it be cleaning the house or, you know, a job that you've been putting off or tax or anything like that, my advice is never let myself think. It's just like, do it for 5-10 minutes. And if it doesn't work, then you get to put it off to another day, but you have to try first.
I see what you mean. Sorry, I had zoned out when you were talking about that there.
We've been
sorry about that, but I got what you said. So yes, you get stuck into something, make sure that you give yourself 5 minutes to do it and then see how you flow. That's such a good idea.
Off, like your tax or I've got to pay this bill, whatever. I'm like, don't even think about it. Just start doing it for 5 minutes. And if it's not working for you in that moment, then walk away from it. But I know what our brains are like. Typically, it's just the starting of something.
And that getting over that hurdle can be the worst.
Yeah. And even with exercise, you know, it's like, you know, go for a 5-minute run. And if you feel like doing longer, do longer. And I think with anything, if you apply that principle to it, it's a lot easier to start.
Yeah, I sometimes do that. I had to do that yesterday. My head was so fuzzy that I was trying to do things. And I was like, I need to just go out and have a walk and move and get out of my thoughts. Like you say, not have anything going on and just do that movement. But I also think with things like that as well, I think we sometimes make them a bigger deal than they are. And we can be time blind about how long it's going to take and how big a job it's going to be. You know, it's stupid things like unloading the dishwasher. Excuse me, I don't know what that is. Alarms just went off there. So I had to run away and just check that the house wasn't on fire. We were talking about our life hacks and being time blind and thinking that, you know, sometimes things take way longer than they do, you know, silly tasks like unloading the dishwasher or folding the washing or whatever. But I like that thought that you just get started. Yeah. And I quite often find doing it.
Done, if it's not, it's not.
Then you move on and do something else. I quite often find having a podcast going when I'm doing things like that helps as well.
Yeah, just to have to focus somewhere else. But I think often we see in our groups and things, we've been like, you know, I've got all this stuff to do, and it's when we compound it. It's like, just do one of the things, you know, just one thing at a time. That's what, whenever I get overwhelmed, my partner is always like, one thing at a time. That's all you can do. And so it just helps. Okay, cool. This is the focus right now. Then I can do the next. Then I can do the next if I feel like it. But typically, once you're in the zone, you just start doing things, don't
exactly
you?
Exactly.
Do the first thing.
And I'm actually going to be talking about this on a video that I'd mentioned. I've mentioned that I've got a video coming up that's going to be talking about having ADHD and using it as a superpower, but I've also done one that's about sort of doing things like that, especially in your business or your life, where you can feel like you're overwhelmed with things to do. I mean, especially if, like me, you've got to do pick up and drop off for your kids. I've got 5 hours a day, which seems like a lot, but realistically it's not. So I've got into the habit of planning for a school term. So I've been doing my planning the last couple of days, and I only give myself 3 things to do a day. One for the business, one for the house, and one for me. And the house could be housework or an appointment for the kids or taking the car in, something like that. For me, it's usually exercise. And for work, I try and make sure I complete one job. I'll tend to do more than that, but I'll have one primary focus a day. And
really like
yeah.
that. That's a great way of doing it, rather than overloading yourself with all of these things that need to be done. It's like, I can only do one of each of these things a day, and if I get anything else done, that's a bonus, but not an expectation.
Exactly. And I think that sort of helps me realize I do actually have time. And I think that can be part of that hurdle of getting on to doing things as well. You worry about the amount of time it's going to take. Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our lovely community?
I don't think so. I mean, I love hearing other people's stories, and
yeah,
I just think the power of sharing is so important, and supporting as well our younger generation with this, because you know, for a lot of us, we didn't have that, and we have the ability to do that. So
well, that's the reason I started this channel up, is to try and, even, you know, it's more for women our age, I suppose, because we, like you say, we didn't have that support. And if we can get that message out there, then it's awesome, isn't it? It's just,
to support our community. And there are so many, you know, there are so many wonderful traits. There's so much color in an ADHD personality, you know, and I love when we can laugh about things, and I know things can be tough, but just having that community around is so important, to be able to make light of some of the things and celebrate the good things.
And that's exactly what I want this channel to be about. You know, let's laugh at ourselves. Everybody else laughs at us. So, you know, but also applaud ourselves for doing as well as we are. That's why I say we're accidentally awesome, because, you know, ADHD doesn't allow you to be deliberately awesome at times.
Yeah, you've got to kind of
find it.
You suddenly find out that you're like, oh, everything's going all right. Okay.
Yeah, how did you manage that?
Figured it out.
I know. That's why I've said for years I'm accidentally awesome, and now I know why.
Love it. So good.
All right then, Laura, I won't keep you anymore. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Same to you. Thank you so much, Lorna.
Bye-bye.
Bye.